expenses have all been done on credit.
Yeah.
And then when the whole credit thing goes up, it goes, people lose their jobs. The man in the street is becoming poorer and I'm becoming richer every day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm Professor Christian Iversen of RTC in Thimphu, Bhutan, and I've been asked to talk about the consequences of what comes after COVID, both in terms of the world, in economics and in business as a whole. And we will basically talk about that in 4 different stages. One is the change digital behavior for the consumers and the business. The second one is the changes and the significant changes in the global supply chain. The fourth one is the environmental issues and the green way. And the fourth one is changes in the way we work. Let's start off by looking at some of the digital behavior of the businesses and the consumers. There will be changes in how we go shopping and how we purchase things. And generations, old and young, have started trading as they've never done before online. And more work will be going online as we progress. We're using the digital world for everything, both in terms of work and in terms of business, for fitness, for doctors, for buying fitness equipment, and for really increasing the retail will come under pressure. And these sorts of changes will automatically mean a very changed behavior, both for the consumers but also for the businesses. And it's fundamentally going to change the high street, and it's fundamentally going to change the shopping centers we have both in Bhutan but also around the world. The other major element that comes out here is the changes in the supply chain. There is something fundamental that we have been delivering over a very long period of time, namely just in time and the cheapest way to produce and manufacture products and services around the world. A lot have gone to the Far East and a lot have gone to China. But the shipping time for products from China to Europe, for example, is 6 weeks. And the robustness of the supply chains will have to change. We will have to start doing much more regional trade. And the global trade will not disappear, but there will be a much more focus on having the right products in stock at the right time, and the best way to do that is to deliver regional channels and regional trading channels. So regional associations like the EU, ASEAN, and in the US, the North American Trade Organization, will automatically gain in importance and will become much more a fixture of trade going forward. So the manufacturers are going to say, where are we sourcing our materials? Are the sources that we've used in the past also the ones that we can use in the future? Or are we going to have warehouses full of products that we couldn't really afford before, and the businesses and the consumers are going to have to pay for that? We have been focusing on suppliers who would supply the cheapest and just in time. The question is, what does the future look like? The future looks like robust, sustainable supply chains. We now need more suppliers, we need higher stocks, and we also have to have regional suppliers. So does it matter whether we do regional suppliers, or does it matter whether we take back production in-house, as they did with the Ford T model when that first came out? Everything at Ford was done in the factory. Is that the trend we're going to be seeing in the future? So the trade patterns of the future will change. The trade corridors will become more regional. Global trade will continue, but it might actually continue at a lower rate and at a lower growth rate, because the growth rates in the past have been anywhere between 3% and 6% a year. That's probably going to even out now. We've now come to the third subject of the consequences of COVID, the green agenda. It has taken backroom play for a while. due to the seriousness of the COVID. However, I think it's very important that the environmental issues remain in the foreground, and they will remain in the foreground, both with businesses and with the consumers. But we probably need to get the economy going first. But the environmental issues will be just as important, if not more important, going forward, and therefore it's important to remember that the green agenda will be part of the interest both for consumers and for the businesses going forward, and they will concentrate on that as part of gaining market shares coming back after the growth lull that we've had. The last but not least important part of the consequences of what happens after COVID is the changes in which we expect to work. How can we work more virtually in the future? There will be more virtual work in the future, but human beings are social human beings. They need to be able to identify with the group, with their colleagues, and with the people they work. So there will be people coming to the office, and there will be people going to the office, maybe not on such a regular basis as they did before. And these things will have major consequences for how we manage and we lead businesses. Leaders will have to make much faster decisions, much more frequently. And the reason for that is that we are living in an evolving world where the changes will happen more and more rapidly as things go through the changes that COVID will be a consequence of. We will travel less. There will be less close human contact. And those sorts of things mean that the leaders have to become much more agile and much more quick with their faster decisions and the way they work. And therefore, I think it's important to underline some of those changes that are actually going to happen. We are going to have to look at the way we make these decisions, and we're going through 3 phases for the moment. It's the present phase of the crisis management to cope with the spread of the disease and in dealing with the consequences of the disease. And that's probably going to last another 3 to 6 months. And then there's the second phase, which is really how do we cope with the outfall in terms of economic decline, growing unemployment, growing frustrations, and growing lack of new businesses starting because the old ones are still trying to recover. And one of the major issues here is how long should state subsidies and salary support actually happen, and how long should it continue, not only in Bhutan but also around the world. And then there is the third phase, which is the new as is. What is the world economy and what is the world unemployment and what is the world depression going to look like when we get this new as is in probably about 24 months. This is a new way of working, a new way of leading, and a new way of understanding our environment. And that's not going to be easy, and I'm not going to sit here and predict what that's going to look like, because that's too far out in the future. But one thing is for sure, things will look different when we come out of this. The consequences for leaders is faster decisions and more agility. And we're going to have to manage business more on key performance indicators than we've ever done in the past. Some of these key performance indicators could be issues on a daily basis, such as consumer and data trends, production and manufacturing and storage data, employee data, and level of sickness in the countries we operate. All things that are going to be very important to understand the fluctuations in businesses day to day, weekly and monthly. And that's why leadership has to become much more agile, and they will have to start working with scenario planning. And scenario planning is not for the weak. Scenario planning is something that requires a lot of research and a lot of background to get the right decisions for the leaders. I've also been asked to talk about the consequences of COVID for monetary and fiscal policies. And the consequences, particularly for monetary policies, is and can become devastating. And the reason is very simple. We now have quantitative easing to an extent that $17 trillion is being used across the world to alleviate, to make it easier for people to come through this crisis. And the consequences are that the people with assets become richer and the people without assets become poorer. So in order for us to keep the economies going on the developed and the developing world, so much easy money, as they call it, is going into the economies for the moment, that people who have assets become even richer and the people who have no assets become poorer. And one of the major trends in the world today that we're going to have to fight is the change between rich and poor. And for the moment, the richer are becoming richer and the poorer are becoming poorer. And fiscal and monetary policies can help elevate that to a certain extent. But if we keep pumping money in, the assets of the people who have will become even bigger. And that is a social problem and a social bomb that we're going to have to deal with. On the fiscal side, the governments are going to have debts beyond belief. And Bhutan is no exception. With 150% or more of GDP debt, Bhutan is going to have problems servicing that debt. And Bhutan is going to have to start looking at more entrepreneurs, more business, and less cities. Build Back Better after COVID will probably mean that they will have to watch their cash flow very well, because they're going to have to start building their stocks higher and bigger due to the fact that the supply chains will change and they have to be more robust and they have to be more firm. So they're probably going to have negotiate with more suppliers. They're going to have to look at the cash flow in a more focused manner. And they're also going to have to see if they might have to do price increases because of just-in-time and cheap supply chains, which might, to a certain extent, not work as well as they did before COVID-19. I think it's essential that we continue doing that. And the best way to do that is to start looking at alternative energy sources, such as solar, waves, and wind. And a lot of the more developed countries are putting enormous amounts of money into particularly wind and solar for the moment. And if you look at places like the UK and Denmark, at some stages up to 50% of their electricity, when the wind is good, is generated by natural resources. And that trend will have to continue, because we cannot continue burning CO2 to the extent we're doing. And having certain countries, in particular China, building coal-fired power stations to an extent that they build as much energy as Denmark generates for the whole of the country in a year, they build in a few months, is totally unacceptable. We need more green energy because we have limited resources, and to be quite honest, there are too many of us on Earth today to keep using the energy we're using.